Shabbat Shalom, Mishpucha. Peace to you, family, and welcome to the next chapter in the book called First Shemu'el. Chapter 27 is what we'll be reading today. It's a very short chapter, or a relatively short chapter, and I'm going to take the opportunity, because it's short, to bounce out on a couple of things that I think are really relevant to something Dawid said in the previous chapter. And so let's just get into it. Abba, we bless you for today. We thank you for your goodness, your grace, your correction. We thank you, Abba, for all those things that you're doing, for holding up the stars, the sun, the moon, even the earth, Abba, for blessing us with consistency, Abba, that we don't wake up one day and everything we knew was wrong or upside down. We thank you, Abba, that you're not like a schizophrenic Elohim, but that you are Elohim of order, and that your order, Abba, permeates throughout all of your creation. We ask that you would help us to fall in line with your order in our hearts, our lev, and even, Abba, in our actions, that we be in agreement with you, that we be one with you, and that we see the blessing of your anointing poured out into our lives. Hallelujah, Yahweh, and Amen. All right, I said we're going to go back to something that Dawid said in chapter 26. So let's do it. You remember in 26, around verse 19, and I'm looking at it to see if I should back up. Yeah, I'm going to back up a little bit. And he's talking to Abner. He's, taunting Abner a little bit and kind of messing with him in verse 15. And Dawid said to Abner, "Are you not a man? And who is like you in Israel?" Remember, I made the comment that they had probably been in battle before together, and they certainly knew of each other's quote unquote prowess in terms of taking care of the enemy and quelching all the kind of oppression that was coming against Israel. But if we go down to verse number 19, you can see that Sha'ul is now that Dawid is now addressing Sha'ul, and he says, "And now, please let my master the sovereign hear the words of his servant. If Yahweh has moved you against me, let him accept an offering. But if it is the children of men, then they are cursed before Yahweh, for they have driven me out today, that I should not join myself to the inheritance of Yahweh, saying, go serve other mighty ones." And so I talked about that a little bit last time, and I want to talk about it some more. All right, so Dawid is saying something that we kind of get the implication that him running out or escaping from Sha'ul, and I want to be a little bit more specific here, him going to another land would put him, and he says, go and serve other mighty ones. And man, that's really strong, Dawid, but I'm gonna try to handle it. So the way that I see it and understand it is a backdrop that I wanna open up to us, because I want us to understand that sort of worldview that Dawid had, and that the ancients had, and that even Mashiach and Sha'ul and the Talmudim that became apostles had, in terms of how things work. And so if you know this concept, this idea of worldview, it kind of goes down to, how do you see things? What is your reference on this entire thing of existence, life, etc., interactions, especially between Elohim and men, and men and men. And when I say men, I mean mankind. So what's your worldview? And I wanna sort of take the covers off of what Dawid was thinking, or how the way that he and the people of his time saw it, and especially not just his time, but the people that were in Israel. And if I could go one more level down, the people who really loved Yahuwah, because it matters. And you're going to see that in a few minutes. And so as I discover or uncover his view, I am intentionally giving you an opportunity to uncover your view. Because here's the deal. Our worldview dictates how we see Elohim, and it dictates how we see the interaction between his creation, especially mankind with mankind. And so walk with me on this one. So he's saying, if I have to go to another country, then I'm going to be, and I'm taking liberty here, so don't throw any rocks at me. I'm going to be under the influence of another Elohim. Whoa. And so I stepped out, I think, to Devarim last week, and I showed a reference that I thought kind of like supported, gave a little bit of a witness to what he's saying here. And here we go to do just a little bit more. So you all heard the term, or maybe you have, maybe you haven't, but have you ever heard the term for God and country? So a lot of times you'll see sort of patriotic movements around the world, not just in the West, not just in the US, but around the world. You'll see this combination effect of the idea of for God and country. And the interesting thing here is that when you look at the scriptures, you see that different nations, different people groups had different mighty ones. Well, hold up. Yeah. Different people groups had different mighty ones. There was certainly some knowledge of other mighty ones, and there were some people who might have been sort of mighty one cosmopolitan in the sense that they flowed through whatever mighty one. You see the Greeks in the book of Acts who are talking about this mighty one and that mighty one and the unknown or the unknown mighty one and all this. And Sha'ul kind of straightens them out. Not Sha'ul from the king of Israel, but Sha'ul the apostle straightens them out at that point. But if I'm what I'm trying to do is tie these things together without teaching a really, really, really long lesson. So for God and country, and what I bring that up for is because I want to make it clear that the Sidonians had a mighty one, that the Amorites had a mighty one. I talked a little bit about Daniel's experience and how this Prince of Persia was fighting against his message coming back to him. And my point there was that this is an example of these principalities and rulers in high places that Sha'ul is talking about in the book of Ephesians. This is an example of them. When we read that chapter, it's not absolutely clear who he's talking about. In fact, I've heard some people say he's just talking about, magistrates and people who are in power or whatever. And that might go so far. But if you remember my idea of the worldview, then you can more clearly see that he's talking about principalities and rulers in high places as though it's a structure, a spiritual structure and hierarchy that's around the whole of existence. Some of them being in line with the Most High and some of them not being in line with him. We can see clearly in Daniel that this spiritual entity, for lack of a better word, this being is not in line with the will of Elohim because he's warring against the messengers trying to bring Daniel back in answer to his prayer. Does that make sense? All right. So now we've got worldview. We've got principalities and powers, which are spiritual beings who may or may not be in alignment with the Most High. And what Dawid is saying here is that you make me run out of this nation who in his mind, rightfully so, especially during this era of time, is a nation of Yahweh. He said, if you make me leave out of the covering of the nation of Yahweh. So remember how Mashiach said, if 2 or 3 of us come together, that he would be in our midst, right? So imagine all of Israel, right? Even though we both, more than 2 of y'all out there, I hope. But if we can remember that all of Israel was not like upright and righteous, we still see the Most High dwelling there in the temple. We still see that he was, the pillar of fire, and then he was the pillar of clouds. And so he was still present there with them. And so what the reason I'm going down this path is because I want to confirm what Dawid is saying, in the sense that the being, the mighty one, the spiritual presence that ruled over Israel was Yahuwah. Not these other things. Not these other demons, shads, mighty ones. If there was such a thing as a small aleph Elohims, not these guys. No, they were not the rulers over Israel. Yahuwah was. He had made it his inheritance, right? And so Dawid uses the same term. He says that I should not join myself to the inheritance of Yahuwah. This was his inheritance. The Most High claimed it for himself as a beachhead in order to propagate his will throughout the earth and ultimately reclaim all the earth that was his already, but to manifest that ownership and to bring forth that agreement so that we would find ourselves back in an Eden type environment by the time we got to the book of Revelation chapter 22. Woo, that's a lot. But I hope you kept up with me. And so say, well, Ephraim, that sounds fine, but give me some witnesses. Well, I'm glad you asked. So it says in switch this to another version. I've been kind of liking the ESV a little bit lately, and I read different versions and try to read the original languages more and more. But sometimes, reading multiple versions can give you clarity that you didn't get from one version. So if you don't do that, put it in your toolkit. Some of the apps that are available for your mobile devices have several versions available to them. Pop out to some of the other versions when you stumble on something, or when you're just kind of like interested in like what is really being said here, what's really going on, and it can give you a little bit of insight. I personally see that it not only gives me a little bit of insight, like, what do you call them? Interpreters, not interpreters, what do they call it? Whatever, people who took the Bible from original language and interpreted it and wrote it out. Not like just like what they can do, but it gives this opportunity for Haruach to get in there and to really give me a colored view where I may have a black and white view. So maybe it'll be the same for you if you don't do that regularly. So that's just a nugget I'll throw out there. But in 1 Corinthians chapter 8, something very interesting happens where Sha'ul is talking about idols. And he says something in verse number 4. He says, therefore, as to eating of food offered to idols, we know that an idol has no real existence and that there is no Elohim but one. And so I'm going to read that in another version because of what I just told you all. And so I'm going to switch to the scriptures version. It says, so then concerning the eating of foods offered to idols, we know that an idol is no matter at all in the world, and that there is no other Elohim but one. And so those two versions sound just a little bit different. But let's keep reading. He says, for even if there are so-called mighty ones, giving room for there to maybe be mighty ones, whether in heaven or on earth, as are many mighty ones and many masters, for us there is one Elohim, the Father, from whom all came and for whom we live, and one Master or Sovereign, Yahushua HaMashiach, through whom all came and through whom we live. And so you see that he fixed it, in my opinion. So let's read verse 4 in the King James Version. Just to get one more witness here. He says, and as concerning therefore the eating of those things offered offered in sacrifice unto idols, we know that an idol is nothing in the world, and that there is none other Elohim but one. And so those quiet is and there is are inserted into the text that were not originally there. But he says there's nothing in the world. And then he says that there is none other Elohim but one. And so it reminds me of the Shema, where it says, Hear Israel, Yahuwah Elohim, Yahuwah, I'm going to say Echad. Why did I pick Echad instead of just saying one? Because Echad says more than just one. It says unique. It says complete. It says that there is no division in him. He is primary. How about that? And so all of these things paint a little bit more color into just the word one. And when you say unique, it's because so if you know this word, Mika Mocha, there's none like him. So it doesn't mean that there are not any other powers. And in fact, there are other powers, but those other powers are nothing like him in the sense that he is unique and that they have their existence. They have him to thank for their existence. And so I know this sounds a little redundant. Bear with me, but I want to get this out, and I want to get it out before we go actually into the next chapter, because we're going to see something happen that I think is a real blessing if we can get the nuggets out of it that I intended to bring forth. All right, so if you go to, I have a few other ones, but I'm just going to go over to, so he says, okay, so I don't know if it's in 1 Corinthians 10. So give me just a second before I go back to the Tanakh. Yeah, there it is. Okay, 1 Corinthians chapter 10. And he's again talking about idols. Looking for where I'm going to start at. Let's start at 15. I speak as to wise men. Judge for yourselves what I say. The cup of blessing which we bless, is it not sharing in the blood of Messiah? The bread we break, is it not sharing in the body of Messiah? Because there's one bread, we who are many are one body, for we all partake of the one bread. Verse 18 says, look at Israel after the flesh. Are not those who eat of the slaughtering sharers in the slaughter place? What then do I say? That an idol is of any value? And this is really the question. And we're going to see here that what he says must be understood in his worldview perspective, or else it'll be misunderstood. Walk with me. Is an idol of any value, or that which is slaughtered to idols of any value? No, but what the nations slaughter, they slaughter the demons, and not to Elohim. And I do not wish you to become sharers with demons. So pause right there. So remember back in chapter 8, he said that they were nothing in the world. But now he's saying that they're slaughtering to demons. And guess what? He got this quote about slaughtering to demons directly from the Tanakh. So he's not making this up as he goes. He's gleaning from the Torah. He's gleaning from the worldview that a righteous Israelite would have. And he's speaking from that perspective. And we need to understand it as best we can from that perspective, or else again, we leave room for misunderstanding. So let's go see where he got that from, and then we'll go back to Shemu'el and keep it rolling. All right. Devarim chapter 32. I think I may have read this last week. They moved, in verse number 16, they moved him to jealousy. All right, let's go to 15. But Yeshurun grew fat and kicked. You grew fat. You grew thick. You were covered with fat. So he forsook Eloah, who made him, and scorned the rock of his deliverance, the rock of his salvation. In other words, he had it so good that he decided he didn't need Elohim. They moved him to jealousy with foreign matters, with abominations they provoked him. They slaughtered to demons, not to Eloah. Mighty ones they did not know. Hold up, what kind of ones? Do you have any idea what that word under there might be? Mighty ones? Elohim they did not know. New ones who came up lately, which their fathers did not fear. And so now we've kind of seen this idea of God and country, and how people had a mighty one that they didn't just make up. Now, I do believe that there's certain things, and I believe that there's passages in the prophets that, you know, these things are made of wood and stone, and they don't have eyes, they don't hear it, et cetera, et cetera. I get it. But that does not discount the fact that Moshe is writing in Devarim that they're slaughtering to demons. Demons are a real thing. I think the word here is shad. That they're slaughtering to shadim. And so that's not empty, but it's weak compared to the Most High. How about that? This is my point. That he is El Elyon. And so this idea of El Elyon, the Most High El, would make no sense if they weren't other L's. I mean, come on, if you're sitting in a room with a bunch of dignitaries and there's somebody in there who is the highest dignitary, you wouldn't be able to say that if there weren't other dignitaries. At least it wouldn't make a lot of sense to say it, because people can say whatever they want to if you haven't noticed. So now that we got all of that out of the way, let's go back to 1 Shemuel. And I'll finish verse 19 again. He says, for they have driven me out today, that I should not join myself to the inheritance of Yahweh, saying, go serve other mighty ones. And so with that, we'll go over to verse 1 of chapter 27, which is the real point of today's lesson. And Dawid said in his heart, now I shall perish by the hand of Sha'ul. Now I shall perish by the hand of Sha'ul someday. There is not better for me than to escape to the land of the Philistines. You see why I went there? Why I went through all of that? Because the Philistines had another mighty one. Then Sha'ul shall give up searching for me any longer in any part of Israel, and I shall escape out of his hand. So Dawid rose up and passed over with the 600 men who were with him, to Achish, son of Maach, sovereign of Gath. Remember where Goliath was from. He's from Gath. And Dawid dwelt with Achish and Gath, he and his men, each man with his household, Dawid with his two wives, Ahinoam, the Israelitess, and Abigail, the Carmelitess, Nabal's widow. And it was reported to Sha'ul that Dawid had fled to Gath, and so he sought him no more. And Dawid said to Achish, if I have now found favor in your eyes, let them give me a place in some town in the country to dwell there. For why should your servant dwell in the royal city with you? And so Dawid is a wise. I know Shlomo was the wisest ever, but Dawid is a wise man. Why do you say that, Ephraim? Because in the city with the concentration of people, and hey, can I throw this in there? The concentration of people who are worshiping another mighty one, whether it be sort of, what do they call that thing? Passively, you know how people are in many countries, you know, they say they love the mighty one of the Bible, and they love, oftentimes they'll use the name Jesus. They love him, and they expect to go to heaven and all these things. And they do this without any real vow of dedication to him, because it's a so-called Christian country. And so if you got my concept of God and country, then you realize that in Philistia, they had their mighty one. Anybody know his name? All right, Dagon. And so you better believe that people would say things like, you know, Dagon bless you, Dagon bless you, or other foolishness that I don't even want to come out of my mouth too much. But they would use Dagon just like we would use in their mouth, just like we would use Elohim. And we saw back in chapter 5, y'all remember what the mighty one of Israel, even the ark, did to this so-called mighty one Dagon. See, I so-called him now, but I'm not so-calling him to say that he don't exist. I'm so-calling him to say that he's not mighty. When it comes to Yahuwah, he is nothing. When it comes to Yahuwah, his authority is weak. However, in the midst of all of these people, we really have to find ourselves. Uh-oh, I switched gears. I switched from Dawid to me and you. In the midst of all of these people worshiping idols, worshiping devils, worshiping all of the so-called mighty ones that are in existence, that are trying to steal the honor and the esteem of our Elohim, and it's for cause. It's because they've been disinherited. Okay, remember in that verse back in the previous chapter, was it 19? Dawid is concerned about not being a part of the inheritance of the Most High. And so the people outside of this covenant that he's made with Israel are temporarily disinherited. Oh yeah, through Messiah Yahushua, they got a way to come in. But without that, they're outside of his inheritance. So back to Dawid, back to me and you. So you're in this country, you're in a crooked and perverse world, and because there is no unified Israel as such, and I'm talking about the Israel of Elohim. I'm not talking about the state of Israel. I'm not talking about, you know, any sort of bloodline references that people try to make. I'm talking about the Israel that the Most High calls Israel. Now, he scattered, according to the book, Israel all over the place. That was the the natural bloodline, and of that natural bloodline, a remnant could have been called Yasharon, like we read out of Devarim chapter 32, because this was the affectionate name that was given to those who had really covenanted with the Most High. And so the beauty is that in the midst of the crooked and perverse world we live in, the Most High has set up these little temporary dwellings. He says in the book of Ezekiel that I will be a little tabernacle for you in that place that I flung y'all out to. And why do we need that? So he's going to be a tabernacle to us. Then in the Brit Hadashah, it says that he is calling us his tent, that he's dwelling in us, that we're the temple of the Ruach HaKodesh, right? And this is so important because this is how we're managing to walk righteously in the midst of all of this crooked influence. But I'm here to tell you that everyone who's in that position, whether you know it or whether you don't, and I want you to know it, you're at war. You're at war all the time. Praise be to the Most High that he's fighting our battles. Because those so-called mighty ones that will try to stop Daniel's answer from coming, those same so-called mighty ones would like to eat you up like bread. But praise be to the Most High that when the enemies come upon us to eat us like bread, they stumble and they fall. In other words, the Most High has got a hedge of protection around us where we are. And we get to see some of the skirmishes and some of the battles, but there's so much going around us in the spirit realm that we never get to see, or most of us often never get to see, if that makes sense. That is ridiculous by comparison to what we think is going on. And the Most High is guarding us and protecting us and keeping us, even in the midst of this stuff. Not only that, He's using us to be fishers of men to hook another son or daughter of Adam back into this covenant with Him. He is intentionally using the disobedience of Israel, all of that long time ago, to put these little, how would you call them? These cells, and hey, now, don't get me wrong on this video, because I'm going to use the word terrorists, right? So you've heard how terrorist cells work. Well, the Most High is using cells. Your family, my family, that assembly over there, that assembly over there, they're operating like cells in the kingdom of Elohim, being that light that's keeping this whole earth from being in total darkness, being that salt that's keeping this whole earth from spoiling. You feel me? So Dawid is in this position, and he's got these other families with him, and you already know that he's thinking, oh, I'm under the influence of another mighty one. Let me give you one quick example that's so simple, and then I'll go on. So if you think that you're not under the influence of another mighty one, okay, I got two real quick ones. Then how come all the days of the week around here are other mighty ones' names? Then how come all of the months of the year, save some that were named after so-called natural mighty ones, in other words, Julius Caesar, but how come those other ones, like the first day of the Gregorian calendar, or the first month of the Gregorian calendar, is named after some other mighty one? So if you think that there's no influence of other mighty ones, then you've been fooled. And I pray the Most High will pull the covers off of your eyes so you can look around and see that it's devilish stuff and devilish intention from people who don't even know that they got devilish intention all around you. Do I say this to make you afraid? No, I say this to make you bold. I say this to make you understand that greater in you is He than he that's in the world. Or otherwise you'd be crushed already. All of us would. So Dawid's in the midst of another nation under the influence. Doesn't mean he has to submit to it, but anytime you're under the influence, there has to be some level of resistance, or that thing will, like Chinese water torture, eventually break you down. In fact, we see in Bereshit, and I think the reference is in the Birkat Shah, how the unrighteousness of Sodom and Gomorrah vexed righteous Lot. Is that in the book of Jude? Yeah, I think that's where it's at. So at any rate, maybe I'll fact check myself and put it in the video. But here's the story. The righteous, like Lot, want to do good, but all the wickedness around them is trying its best to vex them. This is prayer ammunition for you all. It's like, Abba, protect me from this stuff I can't see that's trying its best to pull me away from you, to be a barrier between me and my Father in heaven, and on and on and on. You can walk this out. Just take that seed and remember that falling into agreement with the Most High is the most powerful thing that we can do. All right. And it was reported in verse 4 to Sha'ul that Dawid had fled. I think I read that to Gath. So he sought him no more. And Dawid said to Achish, if I found favor in your eyes, right? He wanted to get out of that city. So I'm going to skip down to verse number 6. And Achish gave him Ziklag that day. That is why Ziklag has belonged to the sovereigns of Yehuda to this day. Now, if you go to the book of Joshua, where the land was being parsed out, you'll find that Yehuda was given Ziklag back then. But just like they were given, excuse me, other lands, they didn't conquer it and possess it. And so now we see the Philistines must have had authority over it, whether it was by might or whatever. They had authority over it, so much so that Achish, the king or sovereign of Gath, can give it to Dawid. And so, oh, that is so beautiful for me, because here we have the Most High working through an enemy to bring forth his will, which is what he did in the first place. He gave it to Yehuda. Yehuda, for whatever reason, we're not going to open that up today, for whatever reason, hadn't possessed and taken and conquered it. But that favor, that loving commitment, that loving kindness, that tender mercy that the Most High had toward Dawid caused the enemy's king to loose himself from the gift that Yahuwah had given to him. You see that? So put that in your memory, because sometimes the blessings that we get are actually through the hands of our enemy. It's a phenomenal thing. And then be careful, because you can say Todah or thank you or whatever to them at a level, but don't forget that all good gifts come from Yahuwah, and that he is doing a thing that nobody can stop. All right, let's go back. And the time that Dawid dwelt in the country of the Philistines came to be 1 year and 4 new moons. And so I talked a little bit about how, all the new moons are called by foreign names, and not just foreign names, foreign mighty one names. Who would have thunk? All right. And when Dawid had stricken the land, he left neither man nor woman alive, but took away sheep and cattle and donkeys and camels and garments, and returned and came to Achish. And Achish would say, where have you made a raid today? And Dawid would say, against the south of Yehuda, or against the south of the Yerachmeelites, or against the south of the Canaanites, or the Canaanites. Yeah, let's say that correctly. Dawid did not keep alive man or woman to bring news to Gath, saying, lest they inform against us, saying, thus Dawid did. And this was his practice all the days that he dwelt in the country of the Philistines. And so verse 11 is kind of curious, because, he killed everybody so that there were no witnesses. They will go back to Gath and tell Achish what it seemed like was really doing. And so when I read that, I was like, what was he really doing? But I see what he was really doing. When he went down to the south of Yehuda, when he went down to the Yerachmeelites and to the south, to the Canaanites, he was actually conquering land that the Most High told us to conquer in the first place. So here Dawid is, didn't I say he was wise? Here he is under the umbrella, so to speak, of Achish, going out doing the king's Elohim, Yahuwah Elohim, doing the king's business in the midst of the land of his enemies. I just love this one. And the reason I love it is because I found throughout my walk in life with Mashiach that the idea is for me to do the kingdom, that's probably even easier to understand, the kingdom business in the midst of being around all my enemies. That if I can focus on doing kingdom business and having kingdom thought, then the fact that I'm in the land of my enemies, and in fact that they have their mighty ones over them, all of those things become less and less a factor to me if I'm focusing on the kingdom. And so my encouragement to you, my encouragement to me is to keep and to focus even the more on the kingdom, to do the work that the Most High called you to do. Okay, we're not going out killing Amalekites, taking back land, and etc. At least most of us aren't. I'm not sure if everybody. But whatever it is that the Most High puts your hands on, whatever plow he puts your hands on to do a thing, do it. Don't let the fact that your enemies are all around you, that they're not agreeing with you, don't let yourself be afraid of their faces because they're in disagreement with the work that you've been called to do. And watch the Most High bless you like he's blessing Dawid. So he wasn't afraid. He said, get me out of the city. I don't want to be around all y'all anyway. And I don't want you all seeing what I'm doing. Look, when the stuff goes down, probably the last place you want to be is in a city or in a crowded city. Because it's going to go from zero to crazy really fast there. Folk who are out in the country, out in the further boondocks, etc., they're going to have at least a buffer before it gets too crazy out there. But if and when it gets crazy, the city is the last place you probably want to be. All right, so that's my commentary on that. And so verse number 12 says, Achish trusted Dawid, saying to himself, he has indeed made himself a stench to the people of Israel and has become my servant forever. So when we're talking about war against our enemy, then trickery is appropriate. Subtlety is appropriate. And so here we see Dawid, he's free from the wrath of Sha'ul for now. And he had to go to another country, in his own words, to separate himself from the inheritance of Yahweh. But he decided in his mind that he was going to do the work of the kingdom even though he couldn't enjoy the presence of being with all those others who were in the inheritance of Yahweh. I think that's an awesome lesson for us and a good takeaway from this chapter. So I pray that you all have enjoyed it. As I say every now and then, like, subscribe. I noticed that YouTube has been unsubscribing some people automatically. So if you're not seeing these videos when they pop up and you want to, please subscribe, encourage us with your comments and questions and just, be a blessing to us. And I hope I'm being a blessing to you all. Until next time, shalom, shalom.